Hi everyone and welcome to Inspire Out Loud. We're doing another tutorial today. I've got the lovely Essie Thomas who's getting set to do some awesome videos for her brand new Patreon account. Hi Essie, how you going?
Good. Hey, Tjoni. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So good to see you.
Yeah, so exciting.
Yeah. So we're going to be going through some just basics of video editing on Adobe Premiere. So we're going to be switching over to share screen pretty shortly. So this is going to be a pretty casual little affair. And I'm just going to show you how to go through the basics of importing and basic editing and exporting in Adobe, just to give people a chance to have a bit of a play with it. And then if anyone's got any questions later and wants to go deeper into any particular techniques and so on, any particular tools, then we can go into that. So I'm just going to dive over into Adobe now. All right, so you should be able to see that screen. Awesome. So this is this is a project that I've already got up. Now, can you see my actual pointer moving, the actual mouse moving?
Yeah, I can.
All right.
And I'm just going to move everybody over. I'm going to cover, I don't know which place, I'm going to put it in front of your tools. Because I've got your little screen.
Okay, so you can see both on your computer screen?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay, so in the middle section down the bottom, so we've got our timeline. And you can see on the left-hand side of that you've got, say, video 2, video 3, video 4. So you've got layers. And the way that I like to think of it is if you imagine panes of glass, and so the higher the video is, then the closer it is to you. So if all of the layers are one on top of each other, if you were to turn them towards you, whatever's on the top is what you can see. Okay? So, and then with the audio, because audio, you don't have one thing in front of the other, if you've got several layers of audio, they're all just going to play. So on the left-hand side here, you can see that we've got some audio buttons, so you can actually mute things in there. Now, up here on the left-hand side, we've got all of the bits and pieces. You can think of this like your palette and all of the different bits that you're going to paint with. And within that, you can have, so you'll have video, you can have images, you can bring your music into there. You can also create titles, which I'll get into, and you will have sequences. So to start off with, yes, absolutely.
Is this an access from things that you've imported into the program, or do you have access to your whole computer from your palette?
So with this, so I'll show you that. So to start off with, this whole section will be empty. Okay?
Yeah.
And all you will have is a sequence. So a sequence is each individual timeline, or each individual actual video is a sequence. And so at the top of the timeline, down the bottom, at the top of the timeline, you can see here where the pointer is. I've got IO-6. So that is a sequence. Next to it, I've got Inspire Out Loud number 1, number 2. So you can have lots of different sequences all within the one project. So if you're doing, say, lots of different mini videos and they're all going to have, say, a similar intro, an outro, similar titles, rather than having...
Use the same media.
Sorry?
You're going to use the same media, so you don't have to go out of the project and back into it.
Exactly.
Right.
So
you can work on several different videos at
Yeah.
Under the same media.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Great.
so then on the left-hand side, if you want to create a new sequence, then on the left-hand side, you would right-click. Can you see that drop-down come down?
Yep.
Yep. And then new item. And if I click on sequence, then... Yeah, so now it's opening a new screen, and down the bottom I've got sequence number 7, and I'm going to rename that, and I'm actually going to do the sequence that the project that we're working on right now, which is Inspiral Out Loud. We are in fact doing Inspiral Out Loud number 7, and I will label it Premiere. And I just completely misspelt Premiere, but I will fix that later. So now I've got a new sequence here that's empty.
Amazing.
So within that, I can use any of this media on the left-hand side.
Already blown my mind.
Do you know, I only discovered sequences about a year ago. So, oh my God, I've been using this stuff for a decade. Now, the other thing that I only discovered a year ago was this whole idea of bins. Now, if I right click on here and see how you've got new bin, that's essentially another folder. So if I create a bin here, I might say I'm going to use this bin to just put the media that I'm only using for number 7. Okay. And that way, because you can imagine down on the left-hand side, if you've got 10 different videos you're working on, you can have hundreds and hundreds of bits of information. So it can get really confusing. So what I'm doing, so now I've got a bin for everything for number 7. I'm going to drag the sequence for number 7 into that bin. Okay? So that's where it lives. And then if I click that little triangle, now the drawer is closed, essentially. So then here on the left-hand side, I've got a bin for every actual video. And then up the top, I've got audio. And because I use audio in more than one sequence, I keep a bin of audio. Then I've got general videos and images, so that includes logos and again just videos and images that I use in the background of many different sequences. And I've also got some of the outros and links in there. So it just means that everything's easier to access. So then let's do a... maybe it's easiest if I just create a little demo. So I'm going to import some video. So I've got my video. Now, this is one thing that is really important. When you import some video, when you edit it, it's not editing the actual video itself. So by chopping it up within Premiere, you're telling Premiere to access little bits of the video. The actual raw video itself doesn't get touched. So the raw video isn't getting stored in Premiere, it's getting stored somewhere else. So when you import something, you're importing it via a specific pathway into Premiere. If you then move that piece of video or image or audio, whatever it is, afterwards, then Premiere is not going to know how to find it. So I keep I file all of my videos. And by the way, you can see this drop up with all my folders, right? Yeah, okay, cool. So I've got all of my videos on an external hard drive. And I just make sure that I put them in there and I keep the file names the same as well. If you change the file name afterwards, you're not going to know what it is. So just put everything where you're going to have it before you start creating your project. It's going to save you lots of headaches later. So then I'm just going to open a little video. That's popped in here on the left-hand side. And then to get that into the timeline, I simply drag and drop it straight in there. And now...
So it's automatically going to go into audio 1 and video one?
That does depend on the file type. So as for why some of these files, it will actually drop it into other audios. I'm not exactly sure why. I know that some audio types, it will take it like right down to channel 6 or 7, and I'm not sure why that is. It just is like that. Now, if you click on the little triangle just next to video, it will just elongate that so you can see it a little bit better. Now, if you want to zoom into it, you can either press Control and the plus button. Sorry, not Control plus. I think just the plus button on your keyboard. And now you can zoom in. And also see this little bar at the top of the timeline just here. So that also can help you to zoom in or out. But if I just want to zoom in and out a little bit, just pressing the plus and minus button makes that easier. So if you want to chop into a little bit of video, and actually before I start on that, can you see up the top in effect controls, we've got video effects and audio effects. Now, if I highlight, those will come up for whatever is highlighted. So just for the sake of having things to mess around with, if I then click on the sky, now I have, which is this, okay? If I click on that, now I've got the video effects for that. So I'm going to click back onto the piece of video. Now, if I cut it, now we've got the razor tool here on the right. If I cut it and then start working on one piece of video, it's only going to affect that one piece of video. It's not going to affect the next piece. So if you decide right from the start that you want it all zoomed in or zoomed out, you might want to do some different effects. You might want to do different things to it. Do it before you start chopping anything up. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the things that we can do, you can mess around with your scale. Now,
that always happens to me. I'll start something and then I'll get to the end and I'll go, now that I've cut up like 12 different things, I need to go ahead and do effects on 12 different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So just get it right from the from the start. So you've got. Sorry.
Is that your screen or my? Oh no, it's my screen. Good.
Okay. So you've got your position up here, which can move you left or right, and you've got your position up and down. So
Wow.
To change that, if you just hover your mouse over it, it will. Can you see the little arrows on each side? So from there, if I then left click on the mouse and move it left or right, it'll drag it. Or if you know exactly what you want, then I think 540 is centered. So you can actually type in as well. And I think 1,000, oh no, it's not 1,000. What's the standard position? It must be 950. So you can type or drag. And same with the scale, then rotation. If you want to do something silly, you can do that. And anchor point, I haven't actually messed around with that. Now, opacity, if I'm just going to move my cursor over. So if I, at this point, reduce the opacity, then you can start to see what's behind me.
And so with opacity, so I noticed that there's actually a line for the opacity on the part of the timeline, like the little yellow line in that section of video that you're down in your timeline.
Do you mean here?
Now, so that's your opacity there. So you can put that up or down. But what I want to know is, can you create a sliding scale of opacity? so that
Yep.
it's
Yep.
start quite
Yep.
seen and then fades
Absolutely.
more opacity.
Absolutely. Now, there's a couple of ways to do that. If you want to just fade in and fade out, then on the lower left of your screen, you've got your effects and transitions. So if you go into video transitions and open dissolve, then you've got a bunch of different dissolves. I mainly just use cross dissolve.
Yeah.
And you just drag and drop the effect straight on to the edge.
Yeah.
Here. And so then if I come in, you can just manually drag that backwards and forwards. So if I just make that really short, and I'll just play it, so it comes in quite quickly. If I extend that cross dissolve, then it's going to come in more slowly. Okay? Now, the other thing that you can do, if I just highlight that, see here in the opacity, we've got keyframes. So those are so those are points where you determine where effects are going to start and finish. So say we've already got our cross dissolve, so we come to here where it's fully opaque. I'm going to make a keyframe there. Then I'm going to come forward, bring the opacity down. See how it's automatically put another keyframe there?
Yeah, and it's put a marker on. Yeah,
put a marker.
That's what I was looking for. Perfect.
Then another one. So if I put another one there, then it means from here to here, I want the opacity at 24%. And then I might say here, I want to bring it back up to 100.
Yeah.
Okay, so then...
So will it do that gradually or will it be like a jump?
I'll show you. So from here...
Let's have a look.
Hi everyone, just thought I'd do a brief introduction. So now it's fading out. How the lighting in here works. I might be a little bit... Now it's staying there. So just see how that goes. So this is 2 feet away from the wall with both curtains. Okay. And now you can literally drag these to where you want if you want that to happen quickly. And so then just thought I'd do a brief introduction and see how the lighting in here works. I might be a little bit too far back. Okay. And then if you want to get rid of that, you just simply cut them. Now, I know that there's other ways that you can do all of this and different people have different ways of working. So this is just the way that I do it. And at least if you've got one pathway through, then you can play around with that and find other pathways as well. So this certainly isn't the only way to do it. Yeah. So you dissolve. Just looking back in the effect, so the dissolves are all the different ways that you can crossfade basically, and you've got a lot of other effects within that. I'm not going to go into that now, but you've also got the same under audio transitions. You've also got crossfades in there. So again, it's just a case of drag and drop straight onto the audio part of your file, and again you can just drag it. Now I know that there's a lot more in-depth ways that you can go into it. My brother's more of an audio and techie person, so he gets quite specific with it, but I just pretty much do the basics. So that's just to give you an idea of that. Now before I go to the next bit, have you got any questions specifically?
No, I'm pretty good so far.
All right, sweet. Now, what I will do then, so like I said before, I like to think of these, I keep pointing to the screen with my finger and you can't see my finger. So I like to think of these the different video levels as say layers of glass. Now I'll show you, for instance, what we can do. So say I bring the video up to level 2 and I'm going to make that video smaller. Now I'm going to drag this sky background across, which at the moment is small. So now that's highlighted. In scale, I'm just going to make that bigger. Okay, so you can do things like that to have different imagery, or you can have different videos, whatever you like in the background. You might decide to do something like you want to have the image maybe a little bit bigger.
One on one side, one on the other. Amazing.
Or you might want to go from here. Remember our keyframes. So we put a keyframe for position and scale. Then on the other side, I might want to make it move even a little bit more. Oops.
This is great for things like adding other musicians into the music videos, and if I bring their sound and video in, I can split the screen.
Yeah.
Something that I definitely didn't know how to do.
Right. Yeah. So you can, you might want to move them over. You can also, if you want to make, say, move it over and then have something else next to it. If we go into video transitions and, not transitions, effects we want. Video effects, under transform, we've got crop. So if you want to crop, you can just, I don't want to do the top. So you can actually crop that whole thing. And you can make that happen gradually too if you want. So you can have just, if you, yeah, so if I say using the little razor, if I just chop that, and so then I say, right, I want just this part to be cropped, for instance. Oops. So then what I might do is go into video transitions, dissolve, cross dissolve, and then you'll get something like this. Yeah, so it'll just make it gradually disappear. I'll just play that again. That was a little bit unclear. Yeah, so you can have a play around with all of that kind of stuff. Now, I just need to look at my notes and make sure that I have got, I'll show you how to put in music. If you want to put in some extra little bits of music. I've been using a lot of Ben Sound music. I'm going to put one of your bits in here though for the actual video itself. But if I pop in an audio transition at the end of that bit of music, so it's a bit jumpy because often just when you're previewing it within the program, it can be a bit jumpy, but it'll be a lot smoother.
Is that a general thing? Like it's generally pretty jumpy?
It depends on how much space you've got and how much power you've got in your computer.
Because I'm often trying to match different videos with a detached audio to one particular audio stream. So what I'll do is I'll record the audio like on my phone or something, and so I'll try and drop that in, but then trying to match.
Yep. The audio. Yeah. So what I find for that, because the visuals for the audio is so clear, especially if I've got, say, 3 or 4 different recordings from, say, the same talk or something like that, I will actually use the audio patterns visually to line them up.
Yeah, I did find that last night, and then just to try and like get just that fine
Yeah.
I found the jumpiness was a little bit hard to deal with, but I mean, it's better than iMovie where it just turns off on me and just decides it wants to go to bed. So
Yeah. So what you can do is, because you can keep all of the audio tracks within the project, but just on the left hand side, just turn the volume off them so that you can still at least use the visuals of the audio track to match up all of the bits.
yeah, I think the hard one is when I start to raise the blade and move things around, and then I'll enter something. But also, like, having different, it's probably going to be different now with different video streams available. Now, if you're
Sorry. Can we just go back to that though, hun? Now, are you talking about having lots of different things but playing the one song?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I would do for that, because you can have a lot of different video, like there's only 3 video channels that are obvious, but then I'll just keep adding the same one to the same thing, to the same project. So you can actually just bunch them one on top of the other. So if you can just have, 5, 6, 10 different videos, make sure all of the volumes are lined up. And then you can literally go, okay, from that bit to that bit, I want that video to go on top. And so literally just drag it north. Bang.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the one you see. Then you know what I'm saying?
Doing that, when you do a cross dissolve, I'm pointing at the screen now. So when you do a cross dissolve on that, does that cross dissolve from one to the other? Is it a nice transition, or is it kind of jumpy?
Yeah. So if you want it to be smooth, what you want to do, and I zoom in to do this. So say then I want a piece from video 4, then I will drag that right up next to it.
Yeah, and then do your cross dissolve in between them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why if you have...
You do want to have your one video stream, but you can have like all of them in different places, and you can be cutting and pasting each different section from there.
Yeah, so it's essentially, if you go whatever is the top line of video, that's the visual bit. And so all of the other bits, line them up vertically with your music first so that you know they're all in sync with the sound. And then chop whatever you want, just drag it up to the top. So that's the one that you're actually seeing.
Yeah. Amazing.
It is. It's so much fun, this stuff. All right. So then music, images. All right, I'm just going through my notes and making sure that I've got everything. Stretch, link. Okay. So now the next thing you might find handy is when you import a piece of video, it will generally, like this one, if I just click on the video, it's highlighted the audio underneath it. So if I right click on that clip, see up here how it says unlink?
Yeah.
So when you import it, it's automatically linked to its own audio. If for whatever reason you need to just start getting rid of things, if you press unlink, now if I click on that, it's no longer connected to the other piece. Which means that if I want to cut that out and only have the video bit now, then I can do that. Whereas, I'll just undo that so that whereas if they are linked, I just pressed Control Z to undo that. So if they're linked, if I try and just cut out the video, it's also going to remove the audio. Now, likewise, you also have, if say I've got a few pieces over here and I go, right, I've got this nice little section, I want those bits to stay together in that sequence, then you can right click and press group.
Yeah.
and that will just hold those chunks together. So pressing group, that can be handy if, say, you've created an intro and an outro and you want to just make sure that those chunks stay exactly the same.
Yeah, like if you're working to a certain time frame, like if you've got a time frame of exactly 5 minutes, you've got your intro and outro, and then you can fill the space in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So then, now another thing that you can do, there's also a stretch option. So if you want to do something that's kind of like a, kind of like slow motion, I'm just going to have a little play with this bit here. Get rid of that. Now, just above the razor is the rate stretch tool. So if I press that, then I can start to stretch this, and suddenly it will play in double time.
Wait, what did you just do?
Okay, so see here above the razor tool is the rate stretch tool. So what you do is you grab that onto the edge of the little piece that you want to stretch, left click it and literally drag it. And so it will just make that one chunk. Now I sound like some crazy devil woman. I'm just going to turn that audio off because that's a little bit confusing. But now it will just... So that will make that go as slow as you want.
Wow.
So the more you stretch it, the slower it plays. You can also do the opposite and make it suddenly go really, really fast. So that's that tool. If you want to slow anything down. Now, we've done the fade. Another thing. This is the last thing I'll just talk about now before you get ready to export anything, because I feel like that's kind of enough initially, unless you have any specific questions. See up the top here, you've got your title. Now with your title, this is where you can create any titles that you want to have, and they can be still, they can be moving. If you want to create like your traditional credit roll, then you would do a default role. And actually I'll show you a default role I'll show you a role that I already have so you can see what it looks like. Credits. So if I pop credits here, then that's what a credit roll looks like. If I double click on it, it will bring up a window and I can edit it. But what I'll do is create a new one so you can see what a new one is like. So for default still, I'll just make a sample. And now the other thing is, when you're working with this, it's going to bring up the background of where you are in the timeline. So if I want to make it a bit simpler to see, I can even make sure that my little timeline thing is just sitting over a bit of black. That will just make it a bit easier to see what you're working on. But if you're creating a heading, a title specifically for to go over an image or something like that, you might want to create it over the image just so you can see exactly what it looks like. So over here, we've got the text tool. So if I click on that and then click on in here, this is a sample. Now it's given me some very small letters. We've got all sorts of different types of pre-samples in here. I'm just going to go with something like that. From here up the top, you can make it bigger or smaller in there. Can you see that little sizing doovy wacky? You've also got your different types of, just like with any word processing, you've got all of those different effects. You've also got your centering alignment there, which isn't so necessary for one sentence, but when you have many, then you can decide what your alignment wants to be. And then over here on the right hand side, if you want to go further into those different specifications, you can. So some of those are the same that are up here. You can also, if you want to add shadow, I'm going to add a red shadow so we can actually potentially see it. And yeah, you've got all sorts of different effects there that you can play around with. So then if you want to bring that over, where's our sample? There's our sample. So then that's what it's like if you've just got a standard still title. And so if you want to move that, you can either do it by going back into the title, going back up to the selection tool and manually dragging it around, which will then reflect over here. Or you can click onto the effects window up here and move it around in here. So you've got lots of different ways of maneuvering things. And like the video and imaging crossfades, you can also do dissolve the same way, so that it can come in like so.
Right.
Okie doke. So there you go. So there's kind of the basics of creating titles, bringing in images, bringing in music, and bringing in video. I think the one thing I didn't touch on actually is for any audio or video that has audio, you can control the levels here to some extent.
And then you can add markers again.
Yeah, exactly, with the keyframes. So the keyframes is really at any keyframe that's telling you exactly how you want it to be by that point.
And so the way that you can select the keyframe is by having the cursor in your timeline on the place in the audio that you'd like the keyframe to arrive, or by clicking within your effects control panel.
Yep, so you can do both. So now if you want it to, what am I trying to say? So if I drag.
So say if we want to put it at like 34.23 seconds.
Yeah.
You can drag your cursor there and you can add your keyframe there by leaving the cursor and then clicking keyframe.
Yeah. Now 34.23 isn't on this piece of video, which is why we're not seeing it here. But if I'm to click on this, I'll just close those.
And that's where you go to your audio, volume, level, or
so if you're looking at something and you're going, oh, why aren't the keyframes coming in? It's possibly because you're over here, but the piece that's highlighted is there. Yeah. So by highlighting that, going to wherever you want it, and you'll see that the red line up in the effect controls moves as I move this, and vice versa. Yep. And so if I decide I want this to be really low, then when I play it,
see how that goes. So this is
gradually get louder.
it will be gradual. Yeah.
Amazing.
And I've got lots and lots of layers in here now, so it's a little bit tricky. But again, you can make that closer if you want it to be a quicker shift. And I didn't have enough playing at that time anyway, so you can't, but you know what I mean.
No, but just knowing how to do it.
Yeah. And you can also just, in the timeline itself, you can maneuver those bits as well. So you can have a bunch of different keyframes. And can you see down the bottom in the timeline?
Oh, and you can just move them manually. Perfect. Yeah, that's
So,
what I was hoping for as well.
So that's another way. And then if you know, and things like that are handy. Like I use that a lot for things like if someone's doing a presentation and they say a lot, and I want to take out the without disturbing the actual volume, the video too much, then I'll just do that, and I'll just make it really fast. So yeah, so you can play around with all of that stuff too.
That's great. I'm currently working on a video where and halfway through the video I cough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfect for that kind of stuff. Now, the last thing that I want to show you is actually once you've put everything in here, how to get it out.
Yeah.
Now, see this little bar at the top? That is giving you the chunk that you're going to export. So I'm just going to do a tiny little sample. So normally what you would do is line that up to the start and end of your full video. Okay, so once you've got that selected, you go up to File and export media. And now this media box will come up. Now, depending on what you're creating for, the videos that I'm doing at the moment, I want them to be big enough that someone can play them on a full computer screen. So what we've got, when it comes to all of the different file types, I'm not super technical, so I don't know the best things. But when I was doing videos for Udemy, their specification was H.264. So that's the one that I use. I don't actually understand the difference between all these different file types. I just know that there are lots. So I know that that is a good quality one. And then when you come into here, sometimes I've used the HD TV ones. If you're looking...
So 720 is makes it available for online. So it's when you move up to like your 1080p, like that's where you start to have like trouble with like viewing it on phones without it being like blurry. Sometimes if the quality is too good, you can't see it on a mobile view.
Right. Okay. So can you see down here in the video?
Upload to Facebook as well is what I find.
Yeah, Facebook. Normally if I am sharing anything on Facebook, I've already put it onto YouTube anyway, or BitChute or something like that.
Yeah.
But so you can see down here, this is 1920 by 1080, so that's a decent size for a computer. You can have a look at things like, so YouTube, so now you've got 640 by 360. But what you might want to do is a few little tests, and to do the tests, because when you're exporting, it's essentially like cooking a cake. And so I like to just take a 10-second snippet to cook it and make sure in the file type you put your specifications on, so you don't have a whole bunch of different files and you're like, I can't remember which was what.
Yeah.
And then you can see which one works the best. If you've got raw material that's, say, high definition widescreen, and then your export is more square, then you're going to have a black strip on the top and bottom, so it's going to look messy. So you also want to make sure that your proportions of width to height, even if it's a different size, that the proportions are the same or similar. And so you can actually manually, down here in the video size, you can actually manually shift those pixels. I tend to not do that though, but yeah, I think I've also used PAL. The other thing that you can do is just stick with the highest quality and then to export kind of like your master file, and then use something like Handbrake to then convert it to a smaller file. So that something like that might, even though it's two processes, you might find that that's simpler for creating the file that you want. Now, one thing that's really important that I only found out about recently, can you see under here in the summary, there's output and source. So the source is the raw video that you're actually putting in. And the output is what comes out the other end. Now, the source is 23.976 frames per second. So I've shot this with my phone, so that's what, and so the frames per second are how many individual images you have in a second of video. The output for this is 30 frames per second, and if the output is different to the input, it's going to be jumpy and weird. And you're going to get these weird flickerings because things aren't quite matching up. So then what you would do down here in the video settings is bring that to 23.976.
Right.
So they're going to match. There's a whole lot of other stuff.
Sequence doesn't match your frame rate, then make sure that they bring it up.
I'm sorry, love, say that again. Yeah, absolutely. So just whatever your settings are. So say for that one, it's 29.9. It's 29.97. So then down here, you want to bring that back to 23.976.
Yeah.
Just make sure that they're matching. And also just check up here in the top, because you can also, sometimes I'll actually just use this to mix audio, because I actually find it easier than Audacity and things like that. So you can actually choose to just get rid of video and simply do audio if for whatever reason you're just wanting that, or if you're doing a podcast or something and you don't want to redo the whole thing, you can just export audio. And for that, you would probably, use something like MP3 is usually what I use just for audio, or waveform, although that can be big, or Windows Media. Also, for any of these files, you can see down the bottom here, estimated file size. So if you're uploading to a site that has a limit on your file size, you can check it down there. It's not always incredibly accurate. Sometimes the estimate is 600-700 meg, and it will come out only 3 or 4. So it's not incredibly accurate, but it will at least give you some idea. So so H.264 for your format generally is the best, and probably the HDTV for is probably a good one. So you can see there the estimated file size is about 83 meg, so that will fit on most things. And then you can also just do a tiny little snippet. I'll just show you what it's like when so this is just doing 16 seconds, and it will just bring up a little timer. Sometimes it can actually take a little while for that to do its thing. Sometimes it will take a couple of hours. That was super fast because that was only 16 seconds, so that just took a few seconds. And then that is somewhere on my computer. So there you go. That is our basics in Adobe Premiere Pro. Now this is the version CS5. It's not the absolute latest one, so if you've got a more recent version, it might look a little bit different, but at least the basics of it are going to be pretty much the same.
Amazing, Tjoni.
Yay. Cool. So there you go. I think I'll finish the recording bit there. So for anyone at home, thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, if you've got any comments, also if you've got any super cool tips, because I don't know everything, please feel free to message me, email me, info@in-spiral.org. And thanks so much, Essie, for being here. Looking forward to seeing your awesome stuff coming out. And have you got an address yet for your Patreon account?
I do. It's patreon.com/Essie Thomas Music.
Wonderful. And I'll put a link up on the screen for that as well. And how else can people find you?
Essie Thomas Music everywhere.
Everywhere.
So Facebook, Instagram, essiethomas.com, and definitely not live anytime soon, but live streamed on Patreon. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Look forward to seeing all your awesome creations. And for everyone at home, keep dreaming the good dream and take care. Ciao for now.
So ease your mind while you're soothing your soul, and you're losing time as your story unfolds.